Hello and welcome to another episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. And if you listened last week, and I hope you did, I hope you listen every week, of course. But if you listened last week, for June, I'm promoting and talking about different things to do in northeastern Pennsylvania in the summertime. And I'm going to have someone on next week about summer safety, how we can stay safe out there, everything from, you know, uh, putting on sunscreen, watching for ticks, being safe at the pool, things like that. But last week, I talked a little bit about some of my memories of summertime and some of the things that I like to do here in northeastern Pennsylvania. I love to go to the state park and kayak. I just love being outside in nature. And I talked about being a kid, loving the summer picnics like St. Joe's, getting my face painted, and going to the Circle Drive-In. I mean, on Sundays, it's a flea market, but it's also a really cool, one of the oldest in the country drive-ins. And I spoke a little bit about that. So it got me thinking I wanted to do a little more about that, but also about history of Lackawanna County. And so there's some fun fundraisers coming up over the summer to help out the Lackawanna Historical Society. So today I have joining me Mary Ann Savakinus, who is with the Historical Society. And I hope I'm correct in saying, are you the director, the executive director? Would that be the right title?
That's correct. Executive director.
Executive director. So welcome, Mary Ann. I'm so glad that you could join me.
Oh, I'm pleased to be here. This should be fun.
So if you don't mind, just for a little background, and I don't know myself, a little bit about how long you've been with the Lackawanna Historical Society, and then just tell us a little bit about housed in a beautiful place on the University of Scranton's campus. So just tell us a little bit about the background.
Sure. The Lackawanna Historical Society was founded in 1886. We are the oldest cultural institution in Lackawanna County, founded just 8 years after the county was incorporated. So we are dedicated to preserving, promoting, and interpreting the history of the county. And since we had an early start, we have quite a bit of history to share with the public, which we do at the Catlin House. We moved into the Catlin House in 1942 when it was bequeathed to us from George Henry Catlin, who was a banker and lawyer who moved to Scranton in the 1870s and just was another devoted fan of local history. So he had left his home to us, and we have the house filled with not just artifacts on local history or furnishings from George Catlin's family and other local families, but also a vibrant research library. And that's where a lot of the action happens on a daily basis. People might come in to trace their genealogy, or they're looking to find out more about a house they just bought, or maybe they just simply want to put up some historic photos in their office. So we get a lot of people coming through for different reasons, but all sharing the same love of local history.
That's great. So, and I know obviously things changed during the time of the pandemic, but so now you're pretty much back open. So people, should they call first for something like that, or are there certain operational hours that you have that people can stop by?
Well, a call is always appreciated just so we know what's coming up for any given day, but we do have regular business hours where people can pop in for a tour or to use the library. Those are Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturday noon to 3.
Okay, great. So they can stop in, but like you said, it's helpful, especially if they have a specific need or something that they're looking for, right?
Yes, some research can be very complicated. It might involve maps or historic records or things that some records we might have to go off-site to get because we no longer have room just in our building to store them. So a little warning is always helpful if it's a big research project.
Okay. And I mean, obviously you're a nonprofit. So if someone stops in and they, depending on what they're looking for, is there ever a cost or a suggested donation associated?
Donations are always appreciated. We do have like a $5 library users fee, so we try to keep the cost minimal. And then if you're a member of the Historical Society, you can use the library or take advantage of our programs at a discount or for free.
Okay. And that's like an annual membership. Someone could sign up, excuse me, maybe from your website or something like that.
Yes, there's a membership page on our website. Again, you can call the Historical Society or stop in and just ask about membership. And we're always happy to add more people to our list.
Oh, that's great. Now, I don't know if have you started back up? Because I know during the pandemic, they stopped years ago. I think it was the summer of 2015. I had some friends who came in from France and I took them around and we did a Saturday morning tour of the architecture downtown. And then I did take them over to the Catlin House. And, I'll get on my soapbox for a minute for people who are like, what's there to see in Scranton? What's there to do? These folks were from a town 45 minutes outside of Paris, and they were gasping at some of the architecture. Genuinely, I'm not even kidding. When I took them into the Radisson with the mosaic tiles, they were just blown away by the architecture, and that was something that was fun. We did in 2015. Are you doing anything? Have those resumed, or are you doing anything similar?
They have. We started them this past Saturday, in fact. So there are set dates beginning June 11th, and then we hop around the calendar in the summer: June 25th, July 9th, July 23rd, August 6th, August 20th, September 10th. All the tours are on a Saturday morning at 11 a.m. We do ask for pre-registration, and there are several different tours we offer. So on any of those dates, we might be starting at Lackawanna College or starting on Courthouse Square. So there's different tours you can take. And we actually managed to keep those going through COVID because
wow.
we
Okay.
reduced the number, we limited the sizes of the groups, and we were outside, everybody was masked. So that was one program we actually kept going, abbreviated, of course, but even in Christmas, we did a carriage ride outside and people got on a carriage, socially distanced, but they were able to take a winter tour. And then, of course, probably one of our more popular ones are the Halloween ones we do in October, which are the haunted tours.
Okay.
But they'll always keep going because they are popular. And as you said, people from out of town are usually blown away by the architecture we have. And I wondered if your friends saw the Albright Memorial Library, because that's modeled after a museum in Paris. So I wondered about that.
We didn't go inside. We did the tour where we met at Lackawanna College. And so
Okay.
they did get to see that building. The cultural center, we went inside. They were amazed with that. And like I said, the Radisson, they just loved, the mosaic tiles. I remember he literally, like, his mouth dropped open and he was just like feeling it. And they just thought that was so beautiful. And I thought, how many people live in the area that actually haven't taken advantage of these tours? Because I mean, the stories and the information I had not known, listening to the tour guide, it was wonderful to hear all this information and know that we have some amazing architecture. It's just beautiful to check out.
We do, and it's interesting, as you said, it's people from outside our region who come in, some specifically to see the architecture. They know it's here, where it's in our backyard, so we don't always appreciate it the way we should. So having these tours on a regular basis hopefully helps to spread the word and get more people in tuned with what exactly the treasure is that we have here in the city of Scranton and around the county, really.
Yeah. I mean, that wonderful buildings all over. And even, down into Luzerne County, there's some beautiful mansions there. It really is something for people to see. Is that, and I don't want to get off track, but the beautiful architecture and how wonderful the buildings were, was that due to the wealth way back in the day with the coal barons and things like that? Is that how we managed to have such beautiful buildings?
Yes, we often say that the city of Scranton is a microcosm for what happened across the country during the Industrial Revolution. We had people come into what was a very rural agricultural community, find the resource and build up the wealth from there. And in Scranton's case, the Scranton family, who started the ironworks and then also involved themselves in the railroad and the coal mining industries, brought in their friends and anyone else who wanted to come in and invest in this new city. So you had all of these entrepreneurs coming to one place. And then when the wealth started to really develop, they put it right back into the city. They built beautiful libraries and public buildings in the churches. And some of our favorite things we talk about on the tour are how proud they were of our local area, that some of our most important buildings are built from stone on West Mountain. So even that, they incorporated where they were getting their money from here in the valley and putting it right back into the beautiful architecture that they designed.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so wonderful. And then, of course, as we know, things change with history and how the jobs were lost and different things happen there. And today, I mean, I forget who I was talking to recently, and they were saying they really don't make buildings like they did back in the day. I mean, I don't know if it's cost or probably maybe even lack of skill with some of the labor, but it's just, is that it? I mean, I know it's, things are done much more cheaply, but we will never get the type of buildings that they did back then. Again, I don't think.
I think it has a lot to do with materials. I think some of the things that people were building with are just not as accessible as they used to be. If you think about all the timbering that would go into these buildings, or the stonework, and of course the crafts, the crafts people. I don't know if we have that kind of skill and talent anymore. Of course, modern architecture can be beautiful, but it's just not as robust as it was back in the turn of the last century.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for a variety of reasons, things do change. Yeah. So let's talk about, obviously, as I said before, every nonprofit could use some help. And I mean, to save the history and for people be able to appreciate it's great to be able to support an organization like the Lackawanna Historical Society. So there are a number of fun things coming up this summer that are fundraisers for the Historical Society. So I had mentioned the Circle Drive-In, and there are going to be, and I know this is kind of an annual thing. Tell us a little bit about the different showings of older movies that are fun with different fun themes that you guys have coming up.
But I have to tell you, we started it because my husband just loves movies, and he was like, you should do old movies. You should do them at the Circle Drive-In. So it was his idea, and we started, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. And at the time, the original owner was still living, Mike Delfino. He's a great guy. I think he was in his 90s when I met him, and he was always at the drive-in. He was a staple there, and his wife had been with him until she passed away. And he was willing to throw anything at the wall and give it a shot, because he was also a good supporter of the local community. So I think the first couple of years we did James Bond movies. We even tied in martinis with them and try to, create a feel for it. And that it went along slowly. You also have the challenge of weather. So we had a couple of bumpy days in the beginning, wet days, thundery days. And then as we started to get more formulated in our concept, we thought, well, what if we do Jaws in June? Because it's the beginning of summer. Everybody loves that movie. It would be really fun to watch it on a big screen. And so we started to do it again. I think the first 2 years it rained. Maybe we had 50 people and it was very slow going. And I can remember going into the snack bar area, which is, a historic treasure on its own, because it's not like the old stone buildings in Scranton that we just talked about, but still the drive-in is a historic site if you think about it. And Mike would be sitting there and he'd say, you just got to keep pushing. It'll catch. And unfortunately he passed away before it caught, but it really took off maybe in 19, but 2020 just nailed it, because everybody wanted to do outside activities. This was an activity that was established. We said, let's do it. And we were blown away by the crowd in 2020. And since then, it's become much more organized as to what's going to happen at each one that we do. So Jaws is the kickoff of summer. Everybody comes in a summertime mood, ready to celebrate. And we do a basket raffle on summer themed items and a lot of Jaws themed items. And then in July, we do Christmas in July with Christmas Vacation. And that's like a cult happening now, because everyone comes in costume. I think we had 6 Cousin Eddies one year, including like a Winnebago. Somebody brought their dog. So we started giving gifts to the people that were our favorite costumes. And like the gifts would be Christmas Vacation theme. Like the guy with the dog, we gave him a bag of that dog food that Randy Quaid throws in the shopping basket in the movie. So it's just a really fun time. And then August, we just kind of see what's happening in the community. So this year, there is a documentary coming out on the making of that championship season. So we're going to show that documentary and the movie and kind of make it a celebration of all things local at that event.
Oh, that sounds awesome. So is the documentary new that's coming? Is that just newly released?
It's going to premiere at the drive-in in August.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And for those who maybe are younger listeners, I remember being, gosh, I don't know if I was 8, 9, 10, I was a kid. I remember when they filmed that championship season, and that was a pretty big deal, right? It was, I think Bruce Dern, Jason Miller, of course. And, I would tell us if whatever you know about that, the filming, and I'm not saying that you were there, obviously you were young too, but what is the history? Obviously, you know a little bit more about the story.
Well, I have, okay. My husband's making the documentary, so I know probably more than I want to know. But he loves things that are nostalgic. He made the Rocky Glen documentary. So anything is a throwback for people's memories. And when he saw that championship season, he remembered the making of it. He's from Luzerne County, but he remembered it happening. And when he saw the movie, he thought it was amazing of how the city looked at that time. This was in the 80s. It'll be 40 years this year. And if you remember, the Lackawanna station, the Radisson that you were just talking about, was abandoned and closed down and really
Yes.
endangered. And there's a scene, I think, when they walk along Penn Avenue and everything is shuttered. And it's a desolate looking city at that time. So while it was fun when Bruce Stern and Martin Sheen and Robert Mitchum were here in the city and everybody was excited, Hollywood came to Scranton. At the same time, it's a time capsule of what the city was 40 years ago and how it's changed. And kind of, I know in the 90s, we talked a little bit about a renaissance in Scranton. Things were happening, and they're still here kind of coming back. And so he's looking at how the city has changed since Hollywood came to Scranton. And then in the future, because he loves movies, he wants to talk about how movies can contribute to the economic development of a community, especially a city like Scranton that has these beautiful old buildings that can be very functional for a filmmaker. So it's got a couple of levels in it. But for most people, it's just, oh, I remember, when they had the elephant scene at Naog, or I remember Martin Sheen walking into the restaurant. So there's a lot of that kind of fan excitement going on too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'll admit this because I am, all my friends or people I run into know me. I'm like Miss Scranton. I'm a big advocate. I love this region. I chose to stay here. And I say there's a lot of wonderful people, architecture, nature, and things to do, and great businesses. And if it's not happening, make it happen, or, you can't just complain. But I will admit, and I'm embarrassed to admit, I have never watched that movie, that championship season. So now I have to go to see it because I'm embarrassed that I never saw it.
But I mean, obviously, Jason Miller wrote it. Jason Miller loved Scranton. And it won a Pulitzer as a play. And my personal opinion, I think it would be a phenomenal play. I've never seen it as a play, my fault. But I think that it's so based on the characters' relationships with each other. It doesn't really transfer in the film that well, but it didn't matter because it was such a big happening for Scranton and for Jason Miller to do it in Scranton. Again, that idea of coming home and celebrating, your neighborhood and your town and bringing it to a higher level. So that could be credit.
Yeah. And Jason Miller was kind of like an iconic figure in Scranton. Many people know, and often I will say a lot in the bars, right? I remember him being at, my dad had a membership at the Liederkranz downtown Scranton on Lackawanna Avenue. And I'll remember years ago, probably over 20 years ago or so, going in there on the St. Patrick's Parade Day. And my brother's friend was super excited that he got to get an autograph from Jason Miller, who was in the Liederkranz that day. And it was like, oh my God, that's Jason Miller. Like, yep, that's Jason Miller. He's here in Scranton a lot. Yeah.
He was living here. I used to see him in Shookie's Diner. Like once a week I would go for lunch and he would be there and he'd talk to everybody. He was very approachable. And again, he really loved Scranton, which I think is a benefit for all of us, that he was so dedicated to his hometown.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was, and not a stupid question, but he was from Scranton, right? I didn't remember
if he lived here, but he wasn't born here. I always thought he was born here, but he wasn't, but he grew up in West Side.
Oh, he did. Okay. All right. So you've got the June 16th, because this is going to air on June 16th. So the morning of the day that your first kickoff event. So Jaws will be the evening of June 16th. And then July, what is the
July 28th is
July 28th.
Christmas Vacation.
And then August, you have the August date?
August 18th.
August 18th. Okay. And that will be the documentary and that championship season. So that'll be, and as you mentioned, the Circle Drive in itself is historic. That we were talking a little bit before I hit record. I believe is it 1949? We said it opened up.
1949. It was probably one of the first in the area. It's certainly one of the last. I think there's only 300 across the country right now. And the East Coast has a lot of them. So it's fascinating that we have so many in a small region. I think there's one outside of Jim Thorpe. There's one down by Hunlock Creek. I think one just announced it was closing, not either of those two. But yeah, we're very fortunate, I think, and I hope people take advantage of a drive-in wherever they live, because there is nothing better than going out on a summer night and setting up a chair in front of your car and watching a movie with the sky behind you. I mean, I wasn't that big of a drive-in person. I went when I was a kid. I think you mentioned that on your blog last week, that, it was always a fun thing to do and fall asleep in the car and everything. And we did that, saw my first Disney movie I can remember. I think it was 101 Dalmatians or something like that. But then later it became like, I don't know. It seems like a lot of work. But we obviously go for the Historical Society ones, but we'll go, as I said, my husband loves old movies. So any throwback, it's so fun to see them at the drive-in. And there's a lot of themes that come with them, not just what we do at the Circle, but I know, and the Circle does other ones beyond us. I know that they've done some haunted features. Just recently, they did Halfway to Halloween, and they showed Poltergeist, Carrie, and Amityville Horror, all, back in April or whatever it was. Yeah.
Now that's a fun trio.
I only made it through one.
Yeah, if they go late, I wouldn't either, because I'm usually finished by 11. And I mean, for me, and this is, unfortunately, not to go the negative route, but like I mentioned last week on my podcast, for me, I actually prefer seeing movies at the drive-in, because I just can't enjoy a lot of times a movie if people are answering their phones, or like the etiquette has kind of changed, I'll say, in society now. So I know other people are better at tuning that out, but I get like very anxious because I'm not enjoying myself. So I prefer the drive-in, because you're like, okay, it's more wide open space, and more room. You don't have to worry about people being on their phones. If they're in their car, I could care less.
I heard you mention last week that somebody put their kid on top of the car.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, at our event, there is a family that does that, but they always take the very back row, because they know that their 3 children want on top of the car, but they're considerate enough at least to move to the back, so they're not in front of anybody.
Well, and I should say this family was second to last. I think we got there, and I wanted to be away from people. We were in the last row, and I'm like, son of a, I'm like, oh, well, and that's me. I guess I just have to learn to suck it up. I'm like, well, all right, I can see around her. It's okay.
But there's lots of room too. I mean, it's rare. Although I think one of our 2020 events, we almost filled the whole drive-in, but it's rare when you can't, find an additional spot if you need a backup place to park.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really big area.
At the Circle. That's another thing I look forward to, is going in and eating their food, because it's cheeseburgers and fries, but there's something about it. And they have the neon signs hanging on the snack bar still. You don't see neon signs anymore. And just the whole concept of going down the little service line, that little song, let's all go to the movies. It reminds me of that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And is that the original concession stand building?
I think it is. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is.
Yeah. And like you said, the neon, you really don't see that anymore. And those are really cool, nostalgic signs. It's very cool to check that out. And that's where, in that building, is where people will go for basket raffle chances, or where
right in, there's a seating area that's under the roof of the snack bar, but it's not inside the snack bar. We're usually set up at some of those seats. It's hard to miss us. We're kind of obnoxious advertisers during it. We have some children that run around with a giant shark, screaming, "Get out of your cars. There's a raffle. There's a raffle." There's a whole lot of kitsch involved, but it's historical societies tend to be taken very seriously. We're here to document history. This is one of those nights where it's just for fun. Just come out and be together and enjoy a summer night. So.
Yeah. And I should say, even if you're not like a lover of that particular movie, come out anyway, because it's kind of like tailgating. I mean, people are having a blast. They've got their chairs, their food, their drinks. And like you said, I've seen pictures of like the giant sharks, and like people have a lot of fun with this event.
They do. And a Christmas Vacation, like I said, that's a whole other story, because they're all out. And one time a family came and they had, it's like a blow up sofa or something. They made a whole living room in front of their car. Like, there are people who are professional drive-in moviegoers, and they really know how to work it. And Julie Esther, you mentioned her, she has her whole back set up like some sort of wonderful hippie den or something. There's beads involved and blankets, but it's a lot of fun. And yeah, the movie's great, but if you walk around while everybody's doing their tailgating thing, you meet some characters, you see some wonderful people. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's again, like you said, it's a great, like, especially during the pandemic when people did want to be outside, it's a great way to be outside, have fun, and just, it's nostalgic and it's just a fun time. And even, your kids is a great time to introduce them if they're not familiar with these old movies, just have a good time and share something. It's kind of like a nice bonding thing. Like, okay, I saw this years ago and I'd love for you to see it. Hopefully you'll enjoy it and just have fun for the whole family.
And we see that a lot. Well, even with Jaws, we'll see, people probably our age who remembered seeing it back when it debuted and everybody was afraid to go to the ocean. And now they're coming with their kids or sometimes grandsons. And "Oh, this is his first time seeing it. He's very scared. Oh, I can't wait to see it and watch him see it." So it is, it's just a way to share a memory and make a new one. So it's
Yeah.
nice.
And
we do
hopefully
have, I
not scare
said,
the kids. Sorry. Hopefully not scare the kids from swimming this summer, right?
I have found now that I've watched it how many years in a row that it's actually a lot funnier than I remembered. And we don't do it as a talk along because sometimes, Sound of Music, you can go and sing along. It's not meant to be that, but there are lines that everyone in the whole park says, you're going to need a bigger boat. Like everybody knows the lines and then Christmas Vacation, when Cousin Eddie first appears, that everybody beeps their horns, everybody goes crazy. It's a little bit like a concert sometimes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And you're right about that. I mean, again, things have changed, right? Technology, CGI, different things. So when you see that mechanical Jaws, it's kind of, again, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but like the kids, I could see them being scared, but at the same time, you're like, yeah, you're not going to be super scared of that thing.
Yeah, there's a lot more scarier things like Jurassic Park and things like that now. This is our blob.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great upcoming event. So check out it's a great fundraiser because it does help the Lackawanna Historical, Society. And then you have a couple other things coming up, or at least I know you do have Beyond the Hill. You're working with the Greenhouse Project in Naog on June 26th. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that event is about?
Yes, thank you. So Beyond the Hill is called Beyond the Hill because in the past, it was known as the Historic House Tour in the Hill. And when we joined the Greenhouse Project in 2019, which was the last time we did it, we called it Rooted in the Hill because instead of visiting just houses, we went into private gardens as well. So it was a house and garden tour. Of course, it didn't happen in 2021. And then we started to think about how we can do something and still be COVID safe. So there's no way we can go into private homes this year. It's just way too out of line. So we thought, well, let's go to some places that we know of that maybe the general public doesn't always get to see. And then let's also try to go to some historic places that aren't necessarily residential yet. So what we did was we created Beyond the Hill, our favorite places and plantings. And this will involve a day-long tour on June 26th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., where people can go to, I think it's 11 different sites, including the Trip House and the library, some obvious ones, but less obvious would be the Marine League up on East Mountain. It used to be the Mattis Center. Not many people know about it unless they're Marines. It's a social club for Marines, basically, but in the basement of the building are dioramas of every war. So it's got a little museum element to it, very educational. And the Marine members are always excited to get the general public to come see what they do. In fact, I think on Father's Day weekend, they're doing like a breakfast. I have to find out if they're doing it because it's really cool. It's like mess tent serving. It's fun. I've done that one a couple of times. So then we're going to those sites for a little history. And then as far as like reuse projects, we're going to go to the Perotti factory, which is being turned into apartments. And we're going to go to the Lace Works, which was Scranton Lace Factory, which is going to be a whole residential village once it's done. But these are two projects that are in process. So you'll get to go into a contracting site basically and see the plans. As for the plantings, we'll go to Sweeney's Beach, which is along the Lackawanna River, run by our friends at the Lackawanna River Conservation Center. And they'll hopefully demonstrate some fly fishing and things like that. And then we'll go over to East Mountain and we have 3 private homes, but rather than go inside, we'll go to their gardens and see how their gardens look. I might have missed 1 or 2 sites there, but that's the idea, is to move around the city and visit some unusual places And again, just a way to raise some money for the Greenhouse Project and the Lackawanna Historical Society, and at the same time, celebrate a little bit of our history and culture.
Well, it sounds like you're getting around. So just for logistics sake, will people just will they be following? Is there a shuttle, or how are you handling getting around the city?
Well, because it's such a wide footprint this year, rather than a rotating shuttle, which is what we did in the Hill, it was a hop on, hop off. This has, for an additional fee on your ticket, you can get a seat on the trolley that will take you on the entire tour. You're on the trolley for the day. I think it's about half full right now. So if people want to go on that, they shouldn't wait. They should make that reservation sooner or later. If you want to go on your own, when you check in with your ticket, you can go to one of 3 sites on the day of the tour. They're listed on your ticket. You exchange your ticket for your tour program book, and in your tour program is a map and directions to get you from site to site. So you could drive it at your own pace. You can go to a couple sites, maybe stop for lunch downtown somewhere, and then resume the tour. It's really make your day as long as you want it to be.
Okay, so they can do it at their own pace as long as it's in that window of 10 to 4, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that, I mean, you mentioned a couple things that I had never heard of. That Marine League with the dioramas. I've never heard of that. That's see, you can always learn something new. That's pretty cool. That's really nice.
We call that Scranton's best kept secret right now, because people just, and it's not the kind of place that would have public hours. They have special events at times, but really it's a club for the Marines. So you can be a member, you could be a social member like you would at any, you mentioned the leader krantz earlier, that kind of club. So you think of it, oh, what do I need to go to a social club for if I'm not a Marine? But the building historic, it was the Mattis Center, and that was basically like a venue on East Mountain for people's proms or wedding showers, things like that. So that has a history on its own. It's this lovely stone building. It works well as the Marine Center because it looks like a fortress. They also have a tank outside. I know the kids always get excited when they see that. And it's just, we don't do much on East Mountain because we're so focused on downtown with a lot of our architecture tours. This is an excuse for us to get up there and bring a little attention to the building and what the Marines have done with it.
That's great. Now I live in North Scranton, so I'm more than familiar with the whole Laceworks, and I usually run that direction. And I've been watching the Perotti factory. I figured that because that's been going on for a while, and I'm like, what's going on? I assumed apartments because I think that's great. I love seeing old factories. I remember years ago in outside of Hershey being in an old shoe factory in Elizabethtown that was turned into apartments, and I love that rustic industrial kind of look. So that will be, and I can't wait to see the old Laceworks when that's finished. I know that's a big undertaking, but
and there's a couple of additional tours that'll be offered there. I know we're working with the University of Scranton on My Story, Scranton Story project, which is like a tie-in to the 250th of the country. And I know they talked about trying to have a tour in the fall of the Laceworks. So again, if you take our tour, take the tour in the fall, you'll get to see the process as it goes forward. But it's a big plan, and they've gotten a lot done over there already. So it's exciting to see a site that was, talk about our industrial history. That was one of the mainstays, and to see it coming back in some other form is great for everyone. Again, that whole Renaissance idea that we don't just throw away the past, we use it to build onto.
Yeah, I can't wait to see. I mean, it's so much better than having it completely destroyed and having like a parking lot. You know what I mean? You see that, and it's heartbreaking when you see things like that. And to lose some of the structures, like, I mean, we lost years ago, the Casey Hotel. I guess that whole building was taken down, was it?
Yes. Yeah. That's the parking garage.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, to see things like that, it's kind of unfortunate because what they were, but then at the same time, there is a certain cost. There's a lot of cost, I guess, actually, to preserve buildings and to keep them.
And I think that's when you see something stall, like you mentioned the Perotti. It's probably a matter, okay, we could afford to do this much right now. Let's go back and raise more money. Scranton Lace is fascinating. We did take an early tour for an exhibit that's going to be at the university with our curator for that exhibit. We walked through the building, and they had torn a lot of the structures down. There was like 23 to 30 buildings on that site at one time. But it was interesting because when they took some walls down, behind them, they found older walls. So even in what they're doing, they're not just creating what we're familiar with, like archaeology, they're going back a little further and exposing a piece of something we haven't seen before. So yeah, Scranton Lace is fascinating. And I think Perotti will be neat. We had toured it when it was still the Perotti factory. So, and that's obviously not the major industries that we're always talking about, but certainly a piece of our culture because of the immigrants who came in and how they established their own businesses. And one of my favorite stories about the Perotti factory or the Perotti company, Dominic Keating was a descendant of the Perottis. He worked at Perotti when it was closing. He was one of the owners. And he talked about when they first incorporated it as a business, they were told they needed a seal for their business. And if you ever look at a Perotti cigar and the little wrapping around it, their seal is the animal seal, because they didn't necessarily translate into English what they meant when they said you need a seal. So they literally put a seal on their product. And I love that because it tells that immigrant story that, I mean, that's an ongoing story that we're always trying to continue. So it's important when we can pass that information along.
Yeah, I mean, that's wonderful. It really is. There's so much vibrant history here, rich history that we all need to learn. I mean, it's great that people outside the area do want to come here and hear it, but it would be wonderful if, I mean, I know we're all busy, whatever, but to take some time, even if it's just once or twice this summer, to get out there and see some of these gems that we have right here in our own backyard. And I love what you guys are doing too with the partnerships, you know, working with the greenhouse, working with, you know, the River Conservancy. It's so important that we have so many wonderful people and organizations locally too. And when you guys work together, I think it just makes greater events too.
It certainly helps us. I mean, our job is to tell the county's story. So how could we tell it without involving the other organizations in the county? One of my personal favorite partnerships is an ongoing fundraiser we do each month. We call it Dine Lackawanna. And once a month, we ask a local restaurant to join us. And then we send everybody we know out to eat at that restaurant. And then the restaurant gives us a portion of the proceeds. So we make money, they get customers, and everybody wins. And our friends at Lamar Advertising, they donate billboards to us. So I don't know if you've ever seen the Dine Lackawanna billboards.
Yes.
But that also, especially in the last couple of years, we obviously didn't do much during 20, but in 2021, we picked back up and we were able to help some of these restaurants get back on their feet. So that was a win-win for everybody. So partnerships of all varieties are extremely important to me.
Yeah. And I will say, Lamar, I used to do fundraisers on World Laughter Day because I do laughter yoga. And I have to say, Lamar has donated billboard space to, you know, throughout the years. They're a very generous local business. Yeah, definitely. Well, in closing, is there anything else? I mean, we covered a lot. And like I said, I'd love to have you back on because obviously there are many stories to tell and you can't tell them all in one day or in one episode, but anything as far as the summertime coming up that we covered, you know, the Circle Drive-In, the Beyond the Hill, anything else that you'd want to mention for people to know about the Historical Society or for this summer in the area?
If you go to our website, lackawannahistory.org, hit calendar of events, you will see everything that we're doing. This month of June has been ridiculous for us. I think we were all caught up in that, ooh, we can go back to the public programming. Not that we didn't do virtual programming. I think we've got 50 videos on our YouTube page that we made during COVID. So if you don't want to leave your house, you can always check our YouTube page, which is Lackawanna History also. But our calendar for June is chock full of all kinds of events, from a ghost tour in the Forest Hill Cemetery to our Dying Lackawannas that I mentioned, the throwback movies at the drive-in. We've also got a Civil War weekend happening up at the Waverly Com. Same weekend as the Hill House Tour or Beyond the Hill. It's June 24th. It's a free program where you can meet some Civil War generals and soldiers at the Com and watch a documentary about the Civil War soldiers or generals. And then on Saturday, the 25th, we have our Civil War Ball returning after 2 years. And this was always a fantastic event. People come in full costume and all they do is dance. The first year we did it, shouldn't we feed them? Don't they need to? No, they didn't want to eat. They wanted water and music. And then we have a band. It's a reenactment band called Spare Parts, just 3 people. And they play period music. And it's, if nothing else, it's a beautiful thing to see. I think we've got some pictures on our website of that too.
Wow.
But a fabulous night too, and a nice way to celebrate summer in another community in Lackawanna County up in Waverly. So we've got a lot going on.
I was going to say, well, there's many things. So people can check out your website and they could also look on your Facebook page as well. I know that you
Yes.
do post events there and different information. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mary Ann, for joining me. I love anything that promotes this region, and you certainly have more than enough for people in the region to check out and for visitors who might be coming to town for the summer to check out. So that's wonderful. So I want to thank my listeners as always. I hope you learned a little bit. And this one definitely, I mean, I learned some stuff. And if you're not as familiar with the county or the city, hopefully you learned something that you find interesting, insightful, and definitely come to Scranton, come to Lackawanna County, check out Northeastern Pennsylvania. We do have a lot to offer. And as always, as I like to say, I appreciate you listening from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.